Hallo und herzlich willkommen zurück zu einer weiteren Folge Witch on the Holy Night.
さて
Aoko und Sojiro sind ja die ganze Zeit vor der Puppe geflohen und jetzt hat sich Aoko entschieden, sich der Puppe alleine zu stellen. Mentally, Aoko bemoaned the disaster she was in. The quality of this puppet was on a completely different level compared to the one from the park 2 days ago. An auto-incarnating puppet motion machine was a rarity in and of itself. But this puppet was also equipped for battle with its extending arms and Gundam projecting crystalline eyes. It was a first-class product that, if you put on the market, would sell for hundreds of millions of yen. Also, that was only when factoring in its value as an antique. For the purposes of combat, it would have made more sense to mobilize a significantly less expensive familiar. To use such a precious commodity as a tool for murder marked this puppet's master as a completely different breed of crazy from the enemies she had faced up until now.
Vivo in som solitare putoris univeris. Ictius meus obitus dies, et meus nativus dies, Theobern. 来たわね
A sound of a crackling music box filled the air. The automaton, animated by its own curses, approached. The corridor measured at approximately 30 feet in length. Aoko lay in wait around a corner further down the hall, anticipating the puppet's appearance. This was not to buy Sojiro time to escape, far from it. Aoko had concluded that she couldn't make a break for it under the current circumstances. Even if she did try to escape and by some miracle made it out of the House of Mirrors, that was as far as she would go. Outside with no cover, Aoko would quickly be overtaken and skewered from behind. As long as the magecraft was disabled, escape was impossible. Instead, she chose to force the enemy back. Her situation was not the most favorable, but neither was her puppet's. Though this narrow hall gave Aoko no place to run, it in turn prevented the puppet from reaching full speed. That was the weak point of this machine. Automata of its era had a tendency to struggle with minute changes in speed.
セット
She flowed energy into her shorted circuits. Her blood flow and magical energy supply were unstable. It would be difficult to construct a formula in this state. All she could do was harden her right arm by imbuing it with as much energy as she could. Doing so turned her arm into an improvised weapon, like a hammer or bat. Assuming she could manage to get into close combat range, this was the best she could do. All she needed now was a plan of attack. The question wasn't what weapon to use, but how to use the weapon she had. The simplest way would be to use the mirror's reflecting to hide and then rush the puppet from its blind spot, except for one major problem. It did not have a sense of sight in the first place. The puppet's view of the world around it did not stem from visual feedback, but from mapping the topography of its surrounding. In theory, it was the same as a bird's echolocation. The environment could be measured based on the emission and return of high-frequency sound waves. Those chants served as the sensor pulses. As far as the puppet was concerned, the mirrors were no better than transparent panes, making even the thought of an ambush laughable.
近づけば近づくほどよりリアルに察知される本当は遠距離からの狙撃が最適なんだけどガンドを撃ってくるならフィンの一撃ぐらい隠してるわよね
Gundam was Scandinavian in origin, and considering its simplicity highly versatile, it was most effective at impairing a target's health by pointing a finger. As a single-action magecraft, it was limited to only causing illness, but there was a secret technique said to be the greatest mastery of the Grande shot, the fin shot. It could do more than cause simple illness. It was a deadly curse that could stop the heart. The wand on her back set her nerves on fire. An unarmed girl and a deadly automaton. It was clear that she was the one destined for death. She considered her slim chances of survival when a vision sent chills down her spine. Widely, using everything she could to clamp down on the feeling Aoko faced her all-too-familiar illusion. She clenched her teeth, to keep them from making a deafening clatter. But there, the sensation of fingers crawling up her neck behind her, the spectre stared and laughed. This alone made Aoko want to bolt. On top of it all, when Aoko tried to mentally stimulate the coming fight, she estimated a 2 in 10 chance of dying in the first 5 seconds. 20% at times, her predictions were harsher than reality. If Aoko fought the puppet 10 times, she would die twice. She could not stop herself from visualizing her own corpse. She imagined herself collapsing, crumbling under the puppet's curse. Her eyeballs swollen like a blowfish, blood and other fluids oozing from every bodily orifice. 1 in 5, 1 in 5, 1 in 5. A 1 in 10 chance of death was bad enough, but 1 in 5, it drove her crazy. Aoko forced down her heart as it tried to escape from her mouth. Taking in a deep breath, she peered at her own reflection. She thought back into that white night half a year ago. This, she decided, was nothing compared to that. 6 months ago at the Kuonji estate. The hound of white roses, the Wonder Snatch, that appeared from within the thick fog, had killed Aoko 100 times out of 10.
Mea animae brutalis, otem mea ftura negata sunt. Manes sum, animam definire ambiguum est.
A dark curse shattered Aoko's daydream. It was only 30 feet away. The puppets rounded the corner. Either side stood in the shadows, their forms indistinct. The puppet gave no warning. Without preamble, it swiftly fired a gun down a barrage. Just as Aoko planned, the curses fizzled out as they hit her mist-like barrier of magical energy. The protection would only last a few seconds, giving her just enough time to... Its dreadful spear sprang toward Aoko's face. The lethal weapon grazed her cheek. All her experience analyzing puppet attack patterns gave her the wherewithal to evade the attack by a hair's breadth. It was one thing if a puppeteer were pulling the strings, but autonomous dolls had their limitations. Aoko had bet everything on this killing machine following a predefined template. The puppet would use a given attack for a given range, and she could adjust her tactics to that. Before its arm had a chance to fully retract, she charged the puppet. It was a risky gamble, but her overall chances were slim to begin with. The scales tipped in her favor. If her predictions were correct, there were 2 ways she would die. One was from a thin shot fired at that range. And the other was if the puppet's attack pattern was beyond her ability to foresee. Instantaneous mass transfer, otherwise known as mass displacement. Immediately after Aoko dodged the puppet's arm, something smashed into her abdomen. The head-on collision from its shoulder failed like a rocket. But where had the ability to propel itself come from? Puppets like this were not built to have the ability to jerk around like that. Doing everything in her power to stay conscious in spite of the pain, Aoko could just make out what had happened. Yes, the puppet's arm had not returned to its body. It was lodged in the wall and reeled itself in from the other direction. Swallowing her surprise, she hastily pulled herself back up. Her abdomen, specifically her diaphragm, had been dealt a significant blow. The attack left her disoriented. Thankfully, the puppet was surprisingly lightweight. Her bones and organs were intact, and she had sustained no life-threatening damage. She was having a hard time breathing, however. She was shaken. So she managed to keep her calm. Another 2 seconds she would be back on her feet. No, that was 2 seconds too long. She told herself to calm down, that she was already calm. She had only briefly lost her bearings. She was fine. She could recover her breath and her vision later if only her body would move.
Intelectus non necessaris est, quisque escat. Nostro abulato fit. Ratio fix tantum est. Dolores nicum cerebrum fit.
Above her, you could hear the warped noise of a powerful force. She could once more feel the touch of death. The puppet was so close that Aoko could reach out and touch it. That also meant that it could reach out and kill Aoko. By intuition alone, Aoko rolled over the puppet's right flank. Its arm was still embedded within the wall. From here it would not attack. She had made the right decision and didn't decide it.
Intelectus non necessaris est, quisque escat. Nostro abulato fit. Ratio fix tantum est. Dolores nicum cerebrum fit.
Aoko pulled herself back up. It was her turn. It was only an instant. Within the labyrinth of mirrors, she saw an image of herself. A blinding, brilliant light flashed. Lacerations appeared across the wall. At the last moment, Aoko managed to thicken the magical energy running through her veins into a primitive form of matrix resistance. It just barely saved her life from what must have been the puppet's ace in the hole. The puppet bore a striking resemblance to Aoko. This powerful curse was not satisfied with stopping Aoko's heart, but destroying her entire being. Aoko did not even have the time to be shocked. This was her chance for a counterattack. The puppet's balance was unsteady, its right arm still embedded in the wall. Aoko prepared to give its defenseless body a strong kick, but her knees buckled and she collapsed into a heap on the floor.
Solitare putris cuniferis. Ictius meus obitus dies, et meus natibus dies. Theobeam.
A sudden nausea and lightheadedness overcame Aoko. Her body temperature began to rapidly lower. She noticed too late. The puppet's curses encircled the hall. The cursed chant that the puppet used as a source of power doubled as a defense mechanism, crippling those who drew near with illness. She bore the full brunt the entire time she was in close proximity to it. Although Aoko had magic circuits, she was succumbing just as Soichiro had. Languidly she forced her deteriorating body to jump back. With all the energy she could muster, she forced her weight past the exhaustion caused by the curse. However, Aoko's blood pressure took a step nosedive, not from the curse-induced anemia, but from what appeared in front of her. They stood in perfect harmony. In front of her was an automaton that shared her face, its left arm held out like an arrow. The deadly weapon shot forward and honed in on her heart. Then a moment before it made contact, the moment she heard that fearless voice completely out of place in the storm of violence, Aoko's body was pulled forcefully to one side. Once again, the extending arm cut through empty air. While the puppet quickly retracted its left arm, Soichiro took the brief opportunity to take Aoko by the hand and flee at full speed. Soichiro ran through the corridor as fast as he could, only stopping when he had put enough distance between them and the puppet.
考えてみると
So he had saved her. She looked angry rather than grateful. This did not keep Sojiro from saying his piece.
明日はどうも忙しいみたいなんだ。
In other words, let's finish this today. Or a rather awkward proposal. Aoko remained silent. She was also rather angry. Not that she could not figure out what made him tick. Nor because he had returned after escaping. Not even because he was spouting his typically airheaded lines. It was, she supposed, that instant. The fact that when he grabbed her hand, her mind had gone completely blank, Aoko found it unforgivable. Which beckoned the response.
あなた、正気。
In the heat of the moment, she blurted it before she could stop herself.
それとも自殺願望でもあったわけ。私もあいつも、あんたなんか殺す対象に過ぎないのよ。少なくとも、恩を売る相手じゃない。言っとくけど、私、助けられたぐらいで曲がる信念は持ち合わせていないから。
Sojiro nodded, clearly unperturbed.
青崎がそんな可愛らしいもんじゃないのは、この夜だけで骨身に染みてるよ。
She found herself slightly offended.
けど君は勘違いをしてるから少し正そう。あいつの狙いは青崎だけじゃない。君だけじゃなく、俺も殺す気だと思う。
She was having none of it. Her eyes shot daggers this way.
話は最後まで聞く。どうしてかっていうと、1階の入り口あるだろ。なんでかあそこから先に進めないんだ。逃げたくても逃げ出せなくて、仕方なく戻ってきた。
Ako's eyes widened ever so slightly in amazement. She felt admiration rather than shock that the enemy would go to such lengths.
それに、さっきので完全に敵扱いされた。あの人形、こっちをじろっと睨んできたし。いや、一瞬でよく見えなかったけど、生きた心地しなかったな。青崎も気をつけた方がいい。多分。
それはご親切にどうも。
うん。なんでこれはもう他人事じゃないんだ。青崎と人形、結論としてどっちが勝っても俺は殺されてしまうんじゃないか。
そうね。そこまでやってるなら目撃者は消すでしょうね。私みたいに。
だろう。でも俺はあいつには殺されたくない。
え？
His words were decisive. As Oko looked up at him, she could swear he was trying to encourage her. It was then that she realized. Sojiro was looking even worse than before.
ちょっと待って。大丈夫なの？あなた。
まあ、醤油を一升瓶飲むよりはマシではないかと。
He tried to make light of the situation, but his forehead was clearly drenched in sweat.
そうか。さっき人形に近づいたから。
How could he possibly be able to withstand a curse that made even Ako's nervous? She bit her lip, annoyed at herself for not noticing this earlier. So she was such an airhead that she hadn't even paused to consider his plight.
下で隠れていようとか思わなかったの？その方がどう考えても安全でしょ？
She really could not understand him at all.
それは青崎が言うセリフじゃないな。でもまあ、長話をしている時間もない。そろそろ追いついてくる頃だ。
Da ist auch die Musik wieder, also ja. He turned to look down the corridor. The crackling sound of a music box could be heard creeping forth from the darkness.
さっき1階にいて考えたんだ。君がやられても俺は殺される。なら、まず奴をどうにかするべきだ。
あなた、何が言いたいの？
She asked a question to which she already knew the answer. She did it to put him to the test. If he wavered immediately, she would have killed him where he stood.
提案。あいつをやっつけるのに協力したら、俺のことは見逃してくれる？
助けられたぐらいじゃ信念は曲げないって言ったでしょ？それに、あなたに何ができるっていうの？
それは青崎が考えてくれ。得意だろ、そういうの。
The commander who had in the overall picture was responsible for delegating roles to the teammates. It was futile to depend on someone who was unable to grasp the situation or evaluate the enemy's strength. So she was proud to share that he knew this. He spoke the truth. Aoko was the only one who knew both Soju and the automata. That was why he pointed out that following her orders to the best of his ability was the only thing he could do. It may have seemed as though Soju had surrendered his capacity for self-thought, but in accepting that he was helpless, he was in fact giving Aoko his complete trust. Fine.
じゃあ、私の指示に 100% 従うってこと？
ああ。それに、これは恩とか義理の話じゃない。一人だと分が悪いから二人でかかるだけだ。善意でも好意でもない。取引って言わないか？こういうの。
So, ich bin etwas erschöpft vom Arbeitstag daher. His eyes sparkled, as if this was bartering in its truest form.
まったく。
This child must have learned that from Tobimaru, Aoko thought. Though she refused to let him see it, she smiled inwardly. Sure, he had gotten the best of her just now, but there were times when defeat was not the worst outcome in the world.
労働と報酬ってわけね。それなら理にかなってる。うん。言いたくないけど。
She relaxed her shoulders and sighed. Her face cracked into a wicked grin, as if her fears had suddenly washed away.
それ、結構私の好みよ。
Aoko repaid Soju's trust in equally measure.
結構きついかもね。あなたの役目。
Aoko warned Soju, moving as fast as she could without her footfalls causing a din noise. Soju remained near the center of the spiral maze on the second floor.
実を言うと、もう一つ用意しておいた仕掛けがあるの。自分でもやりすぎだって呆れたもんだけど、あなたがここに来るのが遅かったから。
ん？仕掛けって俺用の
Soju tilted his head like a squirrel as Aoko freely discussed the final ace up her sleeve. Entrance for your...
地下の柱に着火型のちょっとした魔術式を刻んでおいたの。中心の柱に点火することで連鎖的に他の柱に仕掛けた魔術も起動する。ジャミングを食らう前に作ったものだから、直接魔力を叩き込めば一気にこういくわ。
うん。
Soju was a little unsettled by how unclear the last bit was.
青崎、こうじゃわからない。できるだけ明確にどこまで爆破する気だったのか白状してくれ。あと、もしかして俺早まったか？
いや、その単なる保険っていうか、追いかけっこの途中であんたを見失ったらいっそ建物ごと爆破しちゃおうかなって。
The whole building, yay. Der Gesichtsausdruck von ihr. It was supposed to be solely to her fault after all. She laughed, embarrassed to hear herself say it
いく
aloud.
らなんでも徹底しすぎてる。
Faced with Aoko's cruelty, Soju forgot about the situation at hand and protested from the bottom of his heart.
何よ、いいじゃない。そのおかげでなんとかなりそうなんだから。
She shot back. Aoko dashed down the corridor, mumbling things that probably would have sent Soju packing if he heard them. The strategy was simple. Aoko would use the escape route to the right and avoid the puppet while making her way down the basement. Upon reaching the central pillar, she would infuse the formula she had prepared with magical energy and escape. Once ignited, it would take about a minute for the chain reaction to spread throughout the whole house of mirrors, and another minute for the building to collapse. She would be cutting it a little close, but because she had committed the maze to memory, she was sure she could make it out in time. Aoko assumed that the chain reaction caused by the pillar would clear the barrier that the puppet had placed at the entrance. And even if it was strong enough to withstand the blast, it would not be able to stay standing once the Dacian's bucket. Surgery as captain was secured as long as the formula in the basement was activated. Next came the most important part. The Automon was at a disadvantage in the obstacle-laden house of mirrors and was unable to move at full speed. If it was near the center of the second floor when the building collapsed, it would be caught up and crushed by it. So the problem was keeping the puppet on the second floor until Aoko couldn't make it down to the basement.
しずきくん。せめて3分ぐらいは引きつけて。
Ideally, he would be able to keep it busy until she could activate the formula. As that failed to work, him lowering it down to the first floor would be the next best thing. She understood perfectly well the dangers she was putting Surgery in, but his lucky streak and running speed were nothing to scoff at.
ただ逃げるだけなら、もしかしてとんでもないことをしてくれるかも。あいつ。
Aoko made her way through the hidden passage of the maze, her hopes pinned on Sojiro. Meanwhile, well out of earshot, Sojiro was readying himself for another desperate chase. He calmed his beating heart using a method of his own making. What mattered most was that he remained calm. The plan was simple enough, and Aoko's orders were succinct and easy to understand.
10メートルぐらいの距離を保って、できるだけゆっくり通路を3、4周すること。横道は鏡のつなぎ目で覚えて。ここなら左回りで6、3、7、2枚目にあるから、そこをぐるぐる回ってれば比較的安全よ。
It was essentially a looping marathon. As long as Sojiro kept just enough distance from the puppet's extended arm to allow her to track him, she could continue to chase him indefinitely. Simple though the task was, Sojiro was putting his life on the line as bait. And then there was the final order to run as fast as he could to the exit when building began to sway.
結構じゃなくて
He nervously stuck his head out from around the corner. He could hear the sound of the music box from the other side of the corridor. First he had to make eye contact with it, then head through the thread curtain on the right and begin the game of tag. He spotted it and braced himself. Closer, closer. Fearing that her arm could fly at him at any moment, he went over Aoko's instructions in his head.
あれ
However, he could not quite remember which pane led to the first hidden passage. The third, the sixth, the ninth? No, he was sure that wasn't mistaken. He was confident he had it memorized moments ago, but his nerves had gotten the best of him and his head was now spinning. Then, Sojiro realized that the sound of his pursuer was beginning to grow distant, and at an incredible speed.
Nani?
The unusual silhouette of the puppet astonished him. Before it had taken the form of a beautiful girl. But now it made a bizarre transformation, and returned to the first floor to pursue her primary target.
いやそれは
Sojiro was no longer sure what to do. Before he had even had time to mourn his failure, the puppet had vanished out of sight. I will help, so let me go. Or so he had said, but now he could not follow through.
さて自分はこれからどうしよ
Alone, he tilted his head in frustration. He spoke into the darkness as if Aoko would be there to answer him. Ich würde sagen, an dem Punkt beende ich jetzt diese Folge hier. Vielen Dank fürs Zuschauen und bis zum nächsten Mal. Ciao.